World War II also had a huge impact on different racial ethnic groups in America, and a big impact came to the Mexican American community. Mexican Americans have been in America before America was America. In fact, California, New Mexico, Texas, all that is part or was a part of Mexico prior to the Mexican-American War. So this community has been here for a very long time. And what happens during World War II is there's this huge labor shortage. So many people, so many soldiers are going off to fight in Europe and Asia. And there's a demand for workers, especially in agricultural sector. And this ad in the newspaper for Mexican workers illustrates that there is a huge demand for laborers, especially in agriculture, to do this work. And what ends up happening is there is a program that's introduced called the Bracero Program. And the Bracero Program basically calls on Mexican migrant workers.
Did somebody order Mexican?
To come to the United States, and it's a deal between the United States and Mexico, the governments of those two countries, for temporarily allowing Mexican laborers to come into the United States and fill the labor shortage that was created as a result of the war. And under the Bracero Program, thousands of immigrant workers from Mexico are provided transportation, and they are brought into the United States to do this work. And here you see some of the Mexican laborers getting off the trains from Mexico to do the work that was needed to help sustain the war effort. And these workers, in fact, in your book, it doesn't have a whole lot of information about this, but this program begins in 1942, and these individuals, hundreds of thousands of them, come into the United States during this period of time. And they're doing this work, as you can see right here, primarily in agriculture, but in other sectors as well. And they're allowed to enter into the United States to provide the United States with the labor needed to win the war. And you can see in this poster very clearly, Americanos todos, luchamos por la victoria. Americans all, let's fight for victory. So there was this feeling that you know, and there's a certain irony here, or a certain double standard or hypocrisy here, because if you remember during the Great Depression, there was this repatriation where people, some of who were American citizens, were forced out of the United States, and now we're saying, come back, we need you to do this work. So one of the sad parts of American history, to say the least. And these individuals, these bracero workers, were very important in providing the labor for not just World War II, but in the years following. And this program was enormously successful. Here are different workers working on agricultural sector. Now, there's a lot of tension that actually occurs during World War II. And this tension existed before the war and is elevated as a result of the war. And one of the biggest areas where this tension can be seen is in the Zoot Pachuco culture of young Mexican American youth. And basically the Zoot, you could see it right here, was the style of dress that a lot of Mexican American young people chose to wear. And it was characterized by this sense of rebellion. You know, you reject the tradition, and you wear this long jacket and pleated pants, and you have the hat. And there was this idea that this was kind of a sense of community and identity for young Mexican American youth. Also, African Americans, in some cases, kind of wore this zoot style, but it was really on the West Coast for Mexican Americans. And there was a lot of hostility towards zoot suiters. For one, these were young Mexican Americans who were kind of claiming an identity in a society which was very Anglo-white Protestant America. And here you see these two zoot suiters kind of being looked at by this individual. And one of the things, you know, one, you have this racial element, and that's probably the biggest part of it, this kind of idea that these are Mexican Americans who are kind of, you know, celebrating their pride and their culture and their youth. And that doesn't go over very well in American society in the 1940s. The other aspect is we're at war. And there's this feeling that this style of clothing, this long baggy pants is symbolic of wasting and not rationing and not supporting the war effort. So there's a mixture of things here, but primarily it's this racial element. And what you see happening in the city of Los Angeles is you have something called the Zoot riots. And what ends up happening is a group of U.S. sailors claim that they are beaten up by a group of young Zoot suit wearing Mexican Americans. And what these young naval people decide to do is they start going throughout the streets of Los Angeles.
There was a riot on the streets, tell me where were you? You were sitting home watching your TV while I was participating in some anarchy. First spot.
And this riot occurs where young naval people, servicemen, and civilians start going through the streets of Los Angeles, beating up anybody wearing a Zoot suit. And basically, this kind of turns into riots throughout Los Angeles. Young Mexican Americans who have nothing at all to do with what happened with those sailors are targeted. They're beaten up. Their Zoot suits are torn off. And these riots last over a series of about a couple days, about 7 days a week. Very often they were beaten up. You could see their Zoot suit was ripped off. Their hair was cut. And this is a event that occurs in Los Angeles. And the wild thing about it is that when the media, especially the LA Times and the media in general, looks at the event, it's very clear in the media's and the LAPD's minds who's to blame. It is the Zoot suiters. And the Zoot suiters take all the blame, and here you see a group of Zoot suiters kind of being rounded up by the police, waiting to be transported to the county jail. And these riots take place through various neighborhoods throughout Los Angeles, many of which you could see on the map, which are very familiar to us. And basically this riot...
There was a riot on the streets, tell me where were you? You were sitting home watching your TV while I was participating in some anarchy. First spot.
Is very often kind of a symbol of the kind of racial tension in American society during this time. And these riots spread, and needless to say, Zoot suiters are targeted, not because of anything they did. In some cases, some of the Zoot suiters were involved in some questionable activities, but very often these were individuals who did nothing except express or wear a certain style of clothing. And here you have a group of Zoot suiters being lined up by the police, being questioned, being searched in Detroit, actually, while their girlfriends wait. Cop kind of questioning and taking a look at the Zoot suiter here. Random fun fact, the guy you see right here, famous from the films, the Cheech and Chong films of the Cheech and Chong films. You could see him in front of a piece of art. This is actually a piece of art called Kill the Pachuco Bastard by Vincent Valdez. And this is a modern art piece of the Zoot suit riots. And you can see kind of the sailors in there. And there's a lot of imagery of Catholicism and Mexican history and heritage and pride. And a lot of things going on. Interesting art piece. But Cheech is an advocate of Chicano art, and really interesting piece right there. So take a look at it. Come up with your own interpretations of that.